If you've never lived in the countryside, it's hard to understand just how isolated a farm can feel at night. No streetlights, no traffic, no neighbors close enough to hear you scream. Just miles of darkness stretching in every direction. Tonight, terrifying farm horror stories that happened in places where help was far away and danger could hide anywhere. Let's begin. The stranger outside the cabin. My name is Ethan, and this happened in October of 2019. My wife Rachel and I lived in a small cabin surrounded by dense forest in northern Montana. The nearest town was 20 minutes away. The nearest neighbor was over a mile from our property. Most nights were peaceful. That Saturday evening was no different. A friend had stopped by earlier, and after he left, Rachel and I settled onto the couch to watch a movie. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The fire crackled in the fireplace. Everything felt normal, until somebody knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Rachel immediately sat up. I muted the television. Nobody visited us this late, ever. Then a voice called out from outside. "Hello? Can somebody help me?" The voice sounded young, nervous, almost scared. Rachel grabbed my arm. "Don't open that door." I nodded. Something felt off. I walked closer. "Who are you?" I asked. My truck broke down. "Where?" A pause. Then the stranger answered. "Down the road." The response didn't make sense. There was only one road leading to our cabin. Neither of us had seen headlights all evening. I looked through the window beside the door. Nothing. Only darkness. "Can you please let me in?" the voice asked. That was when my stomach tightened, because the voice sounded different now. Colder, less scared, more demanding. And that's when things got worse. What happened next made us realize there wasn't just one person outside our cabin. There were several, and they had been watching us for a long time. I stepped away from the front door and grabbed my phone. Rachel was already looking nervous. "Call someone," she whispered. I immediately called my friend Mason, who lived about 10 minutes away. Thankfully, he answered on the second ring. "Mason, I think someone's outside our cabin." His voice instantly became serious. "What happened?" I quickly explained everything. The strange voice, the weird answers, the fact that I couldn't see anybody through the window. Mason didn't hesitate. "I'm coming over right now." The call ended. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Then we heard footsteps. Not one set. Multiple. Slowly moving across the wooden porch outside. Rachel grabbed my arm tighter. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. The footsteps stopped directly outside the living room window. Then something brushed against the glass, very slowly, as if someone was dragging their fingers across it. Rachel gasped. I felt every hair on my body stand up. Then the voice returned. Except this time, it wasn't at the front door. It was outside the side window. "Please." The word came out almost like a whisper. "We just need help." That single word bothered me more than anything. We. Not I. We. How many people were outside? 3, 4, more? I wasn't interested in finding out. I shouted through the wall, "Leave now, the police are coming." For a few moments there was complete silence. Then came the sound of laughter. Quiet, low, almost amused. It didn't sound like one person laughing. It sounded like several. At that moment I realized something terrifying. The people outside weren't scared of being caught. It felt like they were enjoying this. And what happened next proved exactly that. The footsteps suddenly began moving around the entire cabin. Front porch, sidewall, back deck, every direction. It was as if they wanted us to know we were surrounded. Rachel immediately called 911. While she spoke to the dispatcher, I grabbed the hunting rifle I kept locked inside a hallway cabinet. My hands were shaking. Not because I planned to use it, because I hoped I wouldn't have to. Then a loud crash came from the back of the house. Both of us jumped. Something had hit the rear deck. Hard. I aimed my flashlight through the back window. Nothing. just darkness. Then another crash, this time from upstairs. My stomach dropped. Someone was on the second-floor balcony. There was no way that should have been possible. To reach that balcony, they'd have to climb a support beam attached to the side of the cabin. Yet somehow, somebody had done exactly that. Rachel looked terrified. "Ethan." "I know." The dispatcher told Rachel officers were on the way, but because of our remote location, it could take a while. That wasn't what I wanted to hear. Not tonight. Suddenly we heard rattling, metal rattling, coming from upstairs. Someone was trying to open a window, slowly, carefully, testing it, seeing if it was unlocked. The realization made me sick. These people weren't lost. They weren't looking for help. They were looking for a way inside. Then we heard something that made both of us freeze. A voice, not outside, inside the cabin. Or at least that's what it sounded like. For one horrible second, I thought someone had already gotten in. I raised the rifle and slowly moved toward the staircase. My breathing felt loud. Every step creaked beneath my feet. The voice came again, faint, almost impossible to understand. I followed the sound upstairs. Rachel stayed behind me. Neither of us said a word. The hallway was empty. Every room was empty. Then I realized the sound wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from just outside the upstairs bedroom window. I slowly peeked through the curtain and nearly fell backward. A face was staring directly at me, a pale face, expressionless, only inches away from the glass. The moment our eyes met, the person smiled, then climbed down out of sight. I ran to the window, gone, completely gone. Whoever it was had disappeared into the darkness. At that exact moment, headlights appeared through the trees. A truck, moving fast. Mason. I've never been so happy to see another human being in my life. Mason jumped out of his truck carrying a flashlight and a shotgun. "What the hell happened?" he asked. I quickly explained everything while scanning the darkness around us. The strange voices, the footsteps, the face outside the upstairs window. Mason immediately became serious. The three of us stayed inside until sheriff deputies finally arrived nearly 40 minutes later. By then, whoever had been outside was long gone. The deputies searched the property. They found footprints in the mud around the cabin, a lot of them. Far more than I expected. One deputy counted at least 6 different sets. 6 people. Possibly more. The thought made my stomach turn. Before leaving, the sheriff gave us some advice. Install cameras, keep exterior lights on, call immediately if anything happens again. The next day, I purchased the best security system I could afford. Within a week, cameras covered nearly every angle of the property. For a while, things returned to normal. Weeks passed, then months. Winter came and went. No whistles, no strangers, no footprints, nothing. Rachel and I slowly convinced ourselves that Then, one night, nearly 6 months later, one of the cameras recorded something that made me realize the nightmare had never really ended. It was 2:14 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. For some reason, I decided to check the camera feeds on my phone. Everything looked normal. Front porch, driveway, garage, backyard. Then I opened camera 6, the camera facing the tree line, and immediately froze. Someone was standing among the trees, watching the house. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't walking, wasn't hiding, just standing there. The timestamp showed they had already been there for almost 9 minutes. I zoomed in. The image became blurry, but I could still make out something disturbing. The person appeared to be wearing a white mask, the same pale color as the face I had seen outside the bedroom window months earlier. My hands started shaking. I woke Rachel immediately. She looked at the screen and turned pale. Neither of us knew what to do. Then suddenly the figure raised an arm and pointed directly at the camera. Not the house, not the yard, the camera, as if they knew we were watching. A second later, the screen went black. Camera 6 had gone offline. What we discovered outside the next morning was even more disturbing than the broken camera, because whoever had been standing there left something behind. and it wasn't meant as a warning. It felt like a message. The next morning, Mason came over again. The three of us walked to the area where the camera had been damaged. The device had been ripped completely off its mount, but that wasn't what caught our attention. Lying underneath it was a small wooden carving, about the size of my hand. At first, it looked like some kind of homemade decoration. Then I noticed the details. The carving was shaped exactly like our cabin. Every window, every door, every detail. Someone had spent hours making it, which meant one thing. They had been watching us for a long time, far longer than we realized. Suddenly, Rachel pointed toward the woods. "What is that?" I followed her gaze. My blood ran cold. Attached to a tree was another carving, then another, and another. Dozens of them, each one hanging from branches throughout the forest. Every carving represented a different house, different cabins, different buildings, as if someone had been keeping track of properties all across the area. Nobody knew who made them. Nobody knew why. The sheriff opened an investigation, but despite months of searching, no suspects were ever identified. To this day, nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been charged. And nobody has ever explained who was outside our cabin that night. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and look toward the woods, I still remember that pale face staring through the upstairs window. And I still wonder something. What would have happened if I had opened the door? End of story. 1.